Meri also felt the hurt of being left out. When the divisions of lots were being talked about, she saw just how unexcited Kody was for her new house. It seemed like her presence there didn't count. And Janelle? She tried to stay hopeful. She even camped on the land in an RV at one point, determined to make the dream real. But deep down, she wondered if Kody's vision was ever truly about unity, or just control. A dream weaponized as tensions rose. Kody began using Coyote Pass as leverage. Whenever a wife questioned him, he redirected. Once we're on the land, things will be different. Whenever the women bickered with each other, he would remind them, this is about building something bigger than us. Stop fighting and think about the family legacy. But the reality? The land came to be more about guilt and less about unity. The dream, once golden, was turned into a tool Kody used to shut down criticism. Christine, fed up with promises that went unkept, finally lost it. She told Kody straight up, I can't do this anymore. You're not the husband I need. I'm done waiting for a dream that's never going to come. And with that, she walked out. Her leaving wasn't merely a divorce, a split of the marriage. It was a statement that Coyote Pass had been a failure. Land that was meant to unite the family now stood as evidence of just how broken they were. Money over memories. After Christine left, the issue of the land became clouded. Who would fund it? Who would get what sections? Would they continue to build? Janelle browbeat Kody for explanations. But in place of financial openness, she received deflection. Robyn needed assurances that the future of her children would continue to be secure. Meri needed recognition that she still counted. Christine, although absent, needed her cut. What had begun as an emotional fantasy turned into a financial nightmare. And when it became apparent that the land could sell for millions on the open market, the last nail was driven into the coffin. The family no longer viewed Coyote Pass as a future, they viewed it as a payday. A battlefield, not a home. The courtroom was evidence of this. The land, once painted in such wonderful words as a source of laughter, love, and legacy, had been reduced to lines on court documents and dollar values on a ledger. All of the wives sat in their corner, not as sister wives, but as competing claimants. The harmony that they had once pledged to one another was now in the past. Christine desired her portion so she could remain on her own. Janelle wanted hers so she could at last experience stability. Meri waited in silence, knowing she at least deserved remuneration for years of being in the background. Robyn held on to Kody, saying she needed more for the benefit of her children. And Kody, he wasn't fighting because of the money, he was fighting for pride. The land symbolized the vision he sold the world. To see sold and carved up was to admit defeat. And that was something Kody Brown could not swallow. The emotional weight as debate raged in the courtroom. Recollection hung heavy in the air. The wives remembered walking the land for the first time, smiling faces on their cheeks. They recalled Kody's speeches, his vows, his assurance that this land will heal us. Now those recollections seared. Christine remembered sleeping nights away, tears streaming down her face, knowing the dream was a mask for her neglect. Janelle remembered the RV she placed on the land, holding on despite all else falling apart. Meri remembered her isolated role on the periphery, informed that she was included in the dream, but never in fact a part of it. And Robyn remembered crying, only to find the family she believed she was joining break apart around her. The land had turned from a symbol of unity to a cemetery of shattered promises. The Coyote Pass transformation for the fans. Seeing that transformation was heartbreaking but inevitable. They had seen the writing on the wall. They knew the dream was never going to be constructed. Because the foundation wasn't earth, it was love, and that love had deteriorated long ago. In court, when the millions were read out, it wasn't a dollar amount in there. It was the cost of a failed experiment. It was the worth of a dream that never happened. And at that point, everyone knew Coyote Pass wasn't a legacy. It was a war zone. And if selling the land made the Browns turn on themselves, wait until you hear what went down. When Kody's anger finally reached boiling point in front of the judge, the atmosphere in the courtroom was already charged with tension. But when the judge leaned forward, cleared his throat, and read out the final numbers, It was like exploding a bomb in the center of the room. The property known as Coyote Pass, the judge declared, his voice steady and calm, has officially been sold for a total of several $1,000,000. The words rang out off the walls. The pens of reporters skimmed across notepads. Some softly gasped, others already had their phones up to record the reactions. Hands viewing live coverage on social media began filling comment sections with shocked emojis and incendiary takes. But nothing compared to what followed. The outburst heard round the world. Even before the silence could settle, Kody Brown erupted. His fist crashed against the wooden table, the impact ringing through the courtroom like a shot. Papers rustled. A woman in the back row made a startled gasp. The judge raised his brow, but even he appeared taken aback. "This was our dream," Kody bellowed, his voice hoarse with a combination of anger and desperation. His face reddened, his curls bobbing as he shook his head furiously. His land was going to be for our children, for our legacy. And now it's lost. For money? For selfishness? Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Reporters leaned forward like sharks circling blood in the water. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing every second of the patriarch's unraveling. Kody wasn't done. He spun toward Christine and Janelle, his eyes wild. "You," he shouted, pointing his finger as though it were a weapon. "You walked away from the family, and now you've destroyed everything. How dare you?" Christine's calm defiance. Christine didn't blink. She sat unmoving, arms crossed, face a combination of calm and quiet determination. For years she had suffered his dismisses, his coldness, his favoritism towards Robyn. But not now. Now in this public forum, she had all the power, not by screaming but by remaining silent. When Kody finally caught his breath, gasping slightly with his own anger, Christine spoke. Her voice was calm, but each word had the impact of decades of hurt. "No, Kody," she said firmly, her eyes never leaving his. "You ruined it when you quit treating us as equals. Don't you dare blame this on me." The room fell completely silent. Even the shutter click of cameras stopped for a moment of a heartbeat. Christine's words hung oppressively in the air, incontestable, unassailable, Janelle's breaking point. And if Christine's serene defiance shocked the room, Janelle's reaction set it ablaze. She leaned in, her voice crisp and biting, each syllable spilling over with pent-up anger. "Do you even hear yourself, Kody?" she snapped. "You promised us this land would be our future, but it was just another one of your empty fantasies. You wanted control, not unity. You used Coyote Pass to manipulate us, to keep us hoping while you gave everything to Robyn." Her words were like blows. The audience in the gallery breathed in unison. The judge, although showing control, leaned back in his chair, obviously sensing that this was no typical dispute over property. Kody's expression contorted in rage, but before he could speak, Janelle struck home. "Don't get to call us selfish for wanting what belongs to us. We bore this family for years, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. And now you're upset because you can't dictate the result. That's not family, Kody. That's you." The room filled with whispers, the energy practically suffocating. Meri's subtle sting, and then the sound no one anticipated. Meri's. For years Meri had been the quiet one, the forgotten one, the woman whose union with Kody had effectively dissolved years and years ago, before the cameras even ceased rolling. She was frequently left out, frequently dismissed, frequently unseen. Not today. Slightly leaning forward, her tone low but biting, she growled, "You only ever built this dream for yourself, Kody. Never for us." The words weren't yelled, but they landed like lightning. They were heard by everyone, felt by everyone. Kody's head whirled to her, his eyes bulging in shock. Meri had told the truth Kody had fought for years to keep buried. That Coyote Pass had never been about family. It had been about ego, control, his image. Robyn's desperate plea. Robyn, who was sitting nearest to Kody, wept. She gripped his arm tightly, sobbing into his shoulder. "Please," she wept, her voice quivering. "Don't do this. Don't break us up further. We're a family, aren't we? The children need stability. My children need stability. Please, Your Honor, I need more of the money, so that they can be provided for." Her voice broke as she begged. mascara running down her cheeks. Some witnesses appeared moved. Others turned their eyes away. To most, Robyn's tears no longer carried any weight. Before the judge could speak, Janelle retorted, "We all sacrificed, Robyn. Don't try to claim you gave more than everyone else. We bore this too. You don't get to change history just because you remained with him." The exchange elicited gasps, whispers, even a repressed laugh from a figure in the gallery. The judge intervenes. At last, the judge slammed his gavel, his voice slicing through the bedlam. "Order, order in the court," he thundered. "This is not a circus. If these interruptions persist, I will empty the room." The threats of contempt loomed heavy, but the damage was already done. The Browns as a family broken, their dirty laundry outed to the world. Kody sat back, seething, his chest heaving up and down in rapid motion, as he attempted to compose himself. Christine sat defiant and proud, Janelle quivering with long-awaited anger, Meri silent but razor-sharp, and Robyn a sobbing mess in her chair. The headlines write themselves. As the courtroom returned to strained quiet, the reporters scribbled away. They already knew their story. Kody Brown's courtroom meltdown. Christine and Janelle finally speak their truth. Robyn's tears fail to move the judge. Meri breaks her silence with brutal truth. In minutes, the hashtags were trending on the internet. The fans divided. Memes went viral. Footage of Kody's tantrum started circulating, with some ridiculing his rage, others sympathizing, and numerous claiming it to be the realest moment Sister Wives had ever provided them. Kody's face of defeat. But the moment that would make it all worthwhile wasn't Kody's yelling, or Christine's fiery retort, or even Robyn's sobbing. It was Kody's face when the judge finally managed to get order and fix his gaze on him. For the first time ever, Kody Brown was beaten. His eyes shone with unshed tears, his mouth pressed into a stern line, his shoulders sagged. The patriarch who once claimed to have control, unity and vision now sat like a man who'd lost power. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that the ruling would go against him. And on some deep intuitive level, he knew Christine, Janelle, and even Meri were correct. Coyote Pass had never been a matter of family. It had been about him. The calm before the verdict. As the tension brewed and the judge was ready to give his ruling, the courtroom dipped into an uncomfortable quiet. Robyn grasped Kody with the desperation of a lifeline. Christine gazed straight ahead, with subdued dignity. Janelle's jaw was clenched, her face set for whatever. Meri crossed her arms, face impassive. Everyone was waiting for the announcement. The money would be split, the land was lost, and the Browns' tale was soon to be rewritten forever. Yet nothing could have better prepared them for the verdict that tore the family apart. The air in the room seemed to be suspended, like it was waiting with bated breath. The reverberations of Kody's breakdown lingered, heavy and thick, but even these seemed to recede, as everyone's attention now centered on the judge. His gavel lay across the desk, face grim, but the significance of his words hung poised to destroy all that the Browns had ever known as family. They all sat stiff, Christine's hands neatly folded in her lap, but her knuckles white from holding them so tightly. Janelle's jaw was set, her body leaning forward slightly, as if it were going to take a blow. Meri sat motionless, looking down, her face an unreadable mask. Robyn was clinging to Kody's arm like a lifeline, tears running down her face, her whispers being desperate prayers. Kody himself resembled a man on the brink of collapse. His chest swelled and subsided in hard gulps, his gaze alternatively fixed on the judge, Christine, and the audience. The patriarch who had dominated his family for years now seemed powerless for the first time in years. And then, the judge delivered his verdict. The judge speaks. The judge leaned forward, his tone even but one that ended all whispers in the courtroom. Having reviewed all evidence, testimony, and financial records, he started, "This court has determined the division of proceeds from the sale of Coyote Pass." The term division of the proceeds made Kody wince. He had spent decades explaining to his family that the land was sacred, their future, their family. Now it was merely cold cash. The judge went on, "Considering years of contributions, sacrifices, and monetary investment by all involved, this court declares that the proceeds in excess of several $1 million shall be equally divided between the wives." Christine Brown, Janelle Brown, Meri Brown and Robyn Brown. The room gasped. For a moment it was like time froze. And Christine blinked in shock. Janelle exhaled sharply, almost a laugh, but laced with disbelief. Mary's lips curved ever so slightly, the ghost of a smile she hadn't shown in years. And Robyn, her face drained of color, her hand tightening around Kody's arm until her knuckles turned white. But the real reaction came from Kody. Kody's collapse. No, this isn't right. Kody bellowed, his voice cracking, near begging. He half risen from his seat, his face contorted with anger and heartbreak. This was going to be my family's legacy. Our legacy. You can't divide it up like it's like nothing. I built this. I sacrificed everything for this family. His voice broke on the final syllable. It wasn't anger anymore. It was desperation. He glared from face to face, hoping someone would stand behind him, would get up and tell the judge she was wrong. But no one did. Not Christine, not Janelle, not even Meri. And certainly not Robyn, whose tears had become shuddering silence. The judge brought down the gavel. Mr. Brown, order. This decision is final. If you can't get your emotions under control, you will be taken away. The power in the tone of the judge finally shut him up. Kody dropped back into his seat, his head in his hands, his body convulsing with the force of defeat. Christine's quiet victory. Christine sat up straighter, her expression serene, her hands no longer shaky. For years, she had been informed her voice did not count, that her issues were secondary, that her joy was optional. But at this moment, justice had spoken on her behalf. It was never about the money. It was about acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that her sacrifices, her trials, her years of raising children in the shadow of abandonment, were finally recognized. Bending towards her lawyer, she whispered, "It's finally over," and though the words were barely audible, they boomed like thunder through the courtroom. Janelle's emotional release. Janelle breathed a deep, trembling breath. She wasn't one to get revenge. But the verdict was like vindication. All those late nights, balancing checkbooks, keeping the family solvent, while Kody promised things that never came to pass. Those years weren't wasted. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the relief wash over her. And then, with a glance at Christine, she offered the faintest nod. Two women who had once stood united under the weight of Kody's dominance were now united again. But this time in triumph. Meri's subtle moment. Meri, as usual, was quiet. She did not yell or weep, but she no longer hid behind quietness, as a sign of weakness. For years, she had been pushed to the side. Her marriage turned into a friendship, her voice overpowered by Kody's rage and Robyn's weeping. She was given something Kody never gave her. Something the judge decided was equality. And although she did not gloat, the glance she gave Kody was enough to strike him with greater depth than words ever could. Robyn's despair. Robyn, however, did not remain quiet. She shook her head furiously, muttering, "This isn't fair. This isn't fair." Repeatedly, her tears louder. She faced the judge. "Please, Your Honor, you don't get it, my children. They require greater security. Stability. I've given up more than anyone. Please, you can't do this." The judge, untouched, stood firm. "Mrs. Brown, this court has weighed all inputs equally. This ruling is non-negotiable." Finality fell on Robyn like a brick. She covered her face with her hands, weeping wildly, her sobs ringing through the still courtroom. The family shattered with the gavel's crack for the second time. Dismissing the hearing, the court exploded. Not in clamor, but in adrenaline. Journalists sprang from their seats, dashing to get their articles in. Spectators outside updated live streams, their phones illuminating with the headlines, "Sister Wives Land Sold, Judge Divides Millions." Among wives, Kody Brown, breakdown as family dynasty, disintegrates in court. Inside, the Browns didn't stir at first. The silence between them was piercing. Once they had been bound together by a belief in common love and family. Now they sat like strangers, divided by years of hurt, and now by the cutting edge of legal reality. Kody stood slowly, his body trembling. He turned toward Christine, Janelle, and Meri, his eyes filled with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "You think you've won," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "But this family is destroyed because of you." Christine didn't even look at him. Janelle shook her head. Meri simply walked away. Robyn clung to him, but even she couldn't lift the weight pressing down on his shoulders. The world reacts within hours. Social media was ablaze. Hashtags like #Kody Meltdown, #Sister Wives Courtroom, and #Team Christine trended across platforms. Fans dissected every detail. Christine's calm, Janelle's fire, Meri's subtle sting, Robyn's pleas, and Kody's dramatic collapse. Others ridiculed Kody, labeling his breakdown as Oscar-worthy. Others complimented Christine and Janelle on finally standing up for themselves. Memes filled the internet. One side of the courtroom, with freedom and Christine and Janelle's faces. The other side with chaos and Kody and Robyn. For years viewers had argued with each other over who was really at fault for the downfall of the Brown family. Now the courtroom had provided them with the most theatrical episode of all. No reality TV show producers scripting it, but penned by real life. The aftermath in the courtroom halls. In the hallways outside the courtroom, pandemonium prevailed. Cameras flashed, reporters screamed questions. Fans pushed to catch a glimpse. Christine went out first. Head held high. She did not respond to questions. But her smile said it all. Janelle went next. Serene but unyielding. Her presence a rock. Meri sneaked out unnoticed. Not seeking the limelight. But not going unnoticed either. Then arrived Kody and Robyn. Kody was shattered. His face white. His eyes empty. Robyn held on to him. Still crying. Covering her face from the cameras. The reaction of the crowd was brutal. Boos accompanied by shouts in support. But largely the message was clear. The hitherto celebrated patriarch had fallen. The legacy in ruins. As the dust calmed, one thing was sure. The vision of Coyote Pass, the property that was to hold them together, had instead tore them apart. What was to be a symbol of family, had turned out to be where they worked their final dismantling. The millions now separated weren't simply figures on a balance sheet. They were the tangible evidence that the Browns were no longer a family of one, but 4 individuals, each forging their own life. And for Kody it was the hardest pill to take. His legacy dream had come to an end, not with togetherness, but with separation. Not with love, but with betrayal. Not with victory, but with defeat. But the biggest surprise was after the ruling. Because what the Browns did with their millions drove fans crazy and turned everything. When the gavel fell and the courtroom cleared, the Browns weren't merely leaving behind a property settlement, but also the final vestige of unity that had held them together. Coyote Pass was lost, sold for millions. But the price to the family couldn't ever be paid in cash. Outside the courthouse, the air was thick. No joy, no sigh of relief, just the solid weight of finality. Photographers snapped away, reporters thronged, and fans nationwide held their collective breath and waited for words. But the Browns, now so eager to put on a show for the TLC cameras, were now sternly quiet. Every face spoke a different tale of defeat, rage, and resignation. Christine, freedom at a price. Christine was the first into sunlight. Her chin held high, her eyes brimming. To all appearances, she seemed to have won, released at last from the cloak of deceit and failed promises that had held her bound for so long. She possessed her portion of the land money, a financial cushion that would enable her to carry on her new life in Utah near her children and grandchildren. But within Christine hurt. Coyote Pass had been her dream as well. She had envisioned her children running in those fields, weddings under an Arizona sun, and family gatherings with a sense of wholeness. Now she bore the burden of realizing those things would never be. The dream was ended not by the land itself, but by the love that was meant to keep it alive. Nevertheless, Christine reminded herself, freedom is paid with a price. And she paid with freedom. Janelle's stability or shattered trust. Janelle stood resolutely silent. She had never been the most emotional of the wives, the one who saw beyond planning to see numbers, plans, and results. On paper, the millions from the sale were a victory. She could at last construct stability for herself, her children, and perhaps even find a future she could rely on. But down below there was resentment. Janelle had invested so much, her money, her time, her energy, giving everything to a family that was no more. She had believed Kody's dream, spent nights in her RV on the land, suffered the isolation of being alone in Flagstaff, all in the name of a promise that fell through. The land money would pay bills, but it would not repay trust. And Janelle, above all else, knew she would never trust Kody again. Meri, the forgotten wife Meri, slipped out quietly, unceremoniously. That was the tale of her life with the family, forgotten, put on the sidelines, endured but not loved. She had remained for years, though there were cracks. She had prayed, begged, and hoped for Kody's notice, for to be reminded that she was important. Coyote Pass was her final hope, that perhaps on this property she would finally be gathered in. Rather, she exited the courtroom with her portion of the millions, but with a sense of emptiness greater than any bank account could ever hope to fill. Meri understood the truth. Money couldn't make up for years of invisibility, and as she passed the cameras, she understood the only future she desired was one free of being Kody Brown's forgotten wife. Robyn. The collapse of the favorite for Robyn. The day was heartbreaking. She had once been sure in her position as Kody's favorite, the wife he stood up for and put above the rest. She felt that her commitment, her tears, and her loyalty had distinguished her. But the courtroom pulled away that veil of illusion. For the first time, Robyn viewed herself, not as the much-loved wife, but merely as one of the contestants in the fight for survival. Her children, who she believed would get the family's dream, had nothing. No compound, no property, no inheritance, just money, and money couldn't fill the place of the legacy she'd imagined. As Robyn clutched Kody's arm on the courthouse steps, her tears were not just for the property. They were for realizing that even she could not keep together a family already reduced to embers. Kody. The fall of the patriarch. And then Kody. The man who used to be the confident patriarch, who walked into every room with confidence. Kody now seemed empty. His hair, once unruly and emblematic of his free-spirited leadership, hung over a face with defeat etched on it. His eyes darted about, searching for control that no longer prevailed. The sale of Coyote Pass wasn't the loss of property. It was the downfall of his identity. For years, Kody had presented himself to the world as the leader of a powerful, cohesive, plural family. The cameras of TLC had trailed behind him as he discussed religion, togetherness, and creating something amazing. Now, it was all a delusion. His family was lost to him, his power was broken, and his name was the subject of a courtroom document. The family shatters beyond repair. The Browns continued to drift apart during the weeks following the trial. Christine flourished in Utah, sharing photos of her new life, filled with kids, grandkids, and love. Fans cheered her radiance, exclaiming she had finally escaped. Janelle turned her attention to her kids. Determined to build stability, she drew strength on independence, and started quietly pulling away from the tumult of her history. Meri started venturing into her own pursuits, determined not to be defined by years of neglect. For the first time, she dared to envision a future where she wasn't competing for Kody's scraps of attention. And Robyn? She held on to Kody, but even their relationship was strained. The dream that once lifted her had fallen apart, and with it Kody's loyalty. Fans saw the cracks, speculating that even Robyn couldn't save him anymore. The fans' verdict. The viewers who had been watching Sister Wives for more than a decade were left shocked. Social media was abuzz with comments. The land was never the dream was love, and Kody killed it. Christine walking away was the most powerful moment of the entire series. I feel for Janelle, she sacrificed everything for nothing. Meri deserved better, always. Robyn thought she won, but in the end, everyone lost. To their fans, the courtroom drama wasn't mere entertainment. It was a morality play about broken promises, misplaced trust, and the devastation that results from letting pride take precedence over people. The legacy of Coyote Pass, and thus, Coyote Pass transcended being a piece of land in Arizona. It became a metaphor for dreams that go bad, families torn asunder, and the price of pride. The millions made from its sale were unable to purchase back what had been lost. The Browns once stood before the world as testimony of unity. Now they stood as a broken family, each walking their own path, bearing scars that no amount of money could mend. Coyote Pass was meant to be their home forever. Instead, it was their last battleground. Closing hook for viewers, and as the dust settled, there was one haunting question left. Was the land ever truly cursed? Or was the curse merely Kody Brown's unbridled pride all along? For one thing is sure, Coyote Pass is long gone, but the wounds it inflicted will reverberate throughout the Brown family forever. The room was charged. The reverberation of the judge's gavel had only just dissipated when all eyes were on Kody Brown. And then it occurred. Kody's face turned red, his hands shook, and he erupted in a meltdown that left the courtroom speechless. The stunned revelation had just been divulged. Coyote Pass, the land that had been promised as the Brown family's eternal dream, had been sold for millions. This was not just land, it was a dream, the place Kody vowed would bring his broken family back together. He spoke of it for years as their future, the home where each wife and each child would find a sense of belonging. He referred to it as the legacy of the Browns. Now in a heartbeat, that legacy was lost, simplified to a courtroom fight about money. Christine sat with serene determination, Janelle with silent anger, Meri with agonized disconnection, and Robyn holding onto Kody, her eyes already welling up with tears. The family that had previously served as a model of plural marriage cohesion was now fragmented into groups, each prepared to battle for their portion. And just when everyone believed that the drama could not possibly get any lower, the courtroom was treated to words that would destroy what little was left of the Brown family bond. To set the stage for the magnitude of this moment, we must flash back. Years prior, Kody had revealed Coyote Pass with a grand vision. He talked of vast open space, several houses, a compound shared, and an opportunity for all four wives, Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Robyn, to live alongside one another, bring up their children in peace. Finally, he promised. He drew up blueprints. He even brought the wives out in front of the cameras, won them over to his vision. "This land is our future," he declared confidently. But in the background, cracks were widening. Christine wrestled with being unloved and unwanted. Janelle constantly fought with Kody over money, angry that he wasn't open with finances. Meri, who was already alone, clung to Coyote Pass as her last resort for belonging. And Robyn, ever the privileged wife, appeared to have more security as the others scrambled for morsels. Gradually, the dream soured. Christine at last turned her back on it, opting for self-respect rather than false hope. Janelle started asking questions and demanding answers, no longer content to be kept in the dark. Meri came to understand she was holding on to a fantasy of family harmony that never existed. When the land came on the market, Coyote Pass wasn't a dream anymore. It was a war zone. And the price? Millions of dollars. Still, no one was prepared for what happened when the dollar values were read. The judge sat forward, papers in front of him, and read the figures calmly. The land had sold for an amount nobody expected. Several $1,000,000. The courtroom gasped. But Kody, he exploded. He pounded his fist on the table, voice booming, "This land was to be our family's dream. You're ruining it for money." His words, intended to guilt his ex-wives, instead fueled the fire. Christine, rock steady but fierce, glared at him. "No, Kody. You ruined it the day you stopped treating us as equals." Janelle cut in, her tone harsher than ever. "Don't blame us, Kody. We constructed that dream with you, and you destroyed it with your decisions." Even Meri, who so frequently remained quiet, grumbled under her breath, loud enough to be heard by cameras. He only ever constructed this dream for himself. Robyn, tearfully, swept into sobs. She begged the judge, "Please, I need more for my children. I've given so much, and we're still a family, at least with me and Kody." But Janelle interrupted her, "We all gave up, Robyn. Don't act as if you gave more. We bore the burden too." The judge slammed the gavel down, calling for order. But it was too late. Kody's breakdown was raw, public, and unretractable. And then came the decision. The one ruling that sealed the Browns' fate forever. Hours of arguments, cross statements, and breakdowns later, the judge finally rendered the ruling. The The proceeds would be divided equally amongst all parties. It didn't matter who remained faithful, who departed, or who insisted on giving up the most. All the wives and Kody would receive a hefty settlement. Christine took a deep breath, a smile flashing across her face. Decades of hurt, suffering, and going unnoticed had finally resulted in this moment closure. She could now go on with her new life, free from Kody's shadow. Janelle stood tall, relief etched on her face. She'd struggled with Kody for so long over money, openness, and equity. Now she had her share, earned, deserved, and inviolable. Even Meri, long subjected to the cold shoulder, got something tangible. It wasn't love she sought, but it was autonomy, the freedom to get on with her life. But Robyn, she fell into Kody's arms, crying. Her tears weren't only for the land, they were for the falling apart of everything she had expected to stand. She whispered, "It's all gone, Kody. Everything's gone." And Kody, he sat speechlessly, his face pale. The patriarch who had insisted on control had lost it all. His dream, his unity, his power. But what ensued after the courtroom cleared confirmed the Browns' tale was far from finished. With the courtroom doors now open, the Browns exited, not as family, but as strangers. Christine departed first, head held high. She wasn't merely leaving with money. She was walking toward love, happiness, and liberty. Fans following her journey knew she had finally emerged victorious. Janelle trailed behind her, her children supporting her. For the first time, she had stability and clarity, without needing to pursue Kody's validation. She was tired of playing second to anyone. Meri slipped away quietly. No cameras in pursuit, no over-the-top departures. Her silence spoke loudly. After all those years of being invisible, she finally dictated her own finale. And Kody and Robyn, united, but shattered. They had each other, but not much else. No land, no together family, no compound dream. The millions could not purchase back the loss. Kody's eyes said it all. Anger, remorse, and defeat. The man who had 4 wives, dozens of children, and the adoration of followers now appeared like a man who had lost everything. The sale of the land had brought closure, yes, but shut the door permanently on the Sister Wives' dream. Looking back, as viewers reflect, one question shines brighter than ever. Was this conclusion always going to happen, or did Kody Brown's decisions alone break up the family he vowed to preserve? The courtroom was thick with tension. There wasn't an empty seat, from the reporters holding notepads to fans of reality TV looking to glimpse the most infamous family in reality TV. This wasn't merely another court hearing. It was a confrontation that had been building for years. The Browns, who were initially touted as a portrait of non-traditional harmony on TLC's Sister Wives, were now about to experience their most public disintegration to date. At the center of this mess sat Kody Brown, the formerly confident patriarch, his long locks slightly tousled, his jaw clenched, and his eyes frantically scanning the room. This was not the dashing man viewers had come to recognize, proudly standing tall on their television screens, flaunting his vision for a plural family and a promising future. No, this was a man on the brink of losing everything: his family, his control, and his ego. The judge shuffled documents, and in the momentary lapse, you could have sworn everyone was holding their breath. Then the announcement, brief and definitive: the property referred to as Coyote Pass has formally been sold for millions of dollars. The words shot out like a gunshot. Murmurs spread throughout the courtroom. Some journalists gasped. Others started typing wildly on their laptops immediately. For viewers of the show, it was history in the making, the end of an era they'd watched for more than a decade. But no response was more volatile than Kody's. His face reddened, his fists balled up, and before anyone could intervene, he banged his hand down on the wooden table, the resounding crack ringing out in the chamber. "This land was to be our future," he yelled, his voice cracking. "You're destroying all we created." The judge's eyebrow arched, but he remained silent, allowing the eruption to unfold. Click click went cameras. Reporters crowded in. Everyone knew this was the moment which would be featured in tomorrow's headlines. Across from Kody sat his ex-wives, Christine, serene but obstinate. Janelle, her gaze narrowed in icy rage. Meri, set face, though the clenched jaw betrayed her feelings. And Robyn, already sobbing, as she clung to Kody's arm, muttering words no one else could catch. It was the ideal image of a family broken. The weight of broken promises. In order to completely get Kody's tantrum, you need to see what Coyote Pass represented. His was not simply property. This was not simply acres of earth and scrub in Flagstaff, Arizona. It was his legacy to Kody. Years ago, he had gathered his wives and painted a grand vision. On camera, he stood proudly, waving his arms across the open fields, promising a new beginning. This, he said, is where we'll finally be united. For Christine, who always felt sidelined, the dream meant hope, that maybe one day she'd finally feel equal in Kody's eyes. For Janelle, it was security, her own home to make, separate from rental houses and financial insecurity. For Meri, so lonely and emotionally discarded, Coyote Pass was the thin cord keeping her attached to the family. And for Robyn, the wife who consistently seemed to have Kody's blessing, it was reassurance that she and her kids would forever occupy a central position in his life. But as the months passed, those vows disintegrated. Christine departed first. Unable to bear Kody's abandonment, Janelle grew louder, calling for openness on finances that never materialized. Meri faded into obscurity, a specter within the family she once assisted in creating. And Robyn, she held on to Kody, the two of them creating a structure of two, while the rest of the family fell apart around them. So when the judge declared that the land was lost, it wasn't merely a monetary exchange. It was the loss of a dream that was already on life support for years. Kody's meltdown in full view. The meltdown was not subtle. His voice shook with rage and despair. "Do you know what you've done?" he yelled, gesturing at Christine and Janelle. "This was meant to be for us, for our children, for our future generations. You're ruining everything because you resent." Christine didn't blink. She relaxed back into her seat, her mouth compressed into a tight line. Her quiet said more than words. She didn't need to fight. Her departure had already been her declaration. Janelle wasn't going to let it pass though. She sat up straight, her tone even but intense. "You wrecked it when you quit acting like partners with us. Don't stand there and blame us for your decisions." The courtroom buzzed once again. Even the judge was interested, as if he were not hearing merely a dispute over property, but the ultimate fall of a family dynasty. Robyn buried her face in her hands, her shoulders heaving as she wept. She whispered frantically to Kody, but her words were lost in the din. Meri, however, was still as a statue. Her face was unexpressive, though the clench of her jaw gave away the tempest raging beneath. And in that instant, with flashes firing and tensions simmering, Kody Brown, the once final pillar of plural marriage in America, appeared less patriarch than a man seeing his whole world collapse around him. The symbolism of the sale. Why did this moment seem so historic? Because for years, Coyote Pass was the stick Kody attempted to use to keep his fraying family intact. Every time the wives expressed feeling unloved, excluded or impoverished, Kody would refer to the land. "It'll all add up when we build. You'll see we're going to be one family again." But the building never materialized. The unity never materialized. Instead, the land was a battleground, an empty promise in their faces. And now that the land is sold, the last illusion was crushed. There was no compound in the making, no common future, no heritage. Just millions of dollars to be shared, and years of bitterness simmering over. For the Browns fans, it was poetic justice. For the Browns, tragedy. And for Kody, it was humiliation. The world watching outside the courtroom. There were fans carrying signs, supportive and scathing, entertainment reporters, local news, and even the major networks swarmed the courthouse steps. All of them wanted the same thing, a glimpse of the Browns as they met their destruction. Social media was already on fire. Video clips of Kody's outburst were trending within minutes. Tweets included, "Kody losing it in court, who's surprised?" Others commented, "Christine's silence is everything. She's won without saying a word." The entire world was witnessing this, and Kody was aware of that. That just fueled his rage more. He wasn't just losing in front of his former wives. He was losing in front of millions of viewers. The foreshadowing of what's to come. The judge demanded order. But it was too late. Kody's outburst had already established the tone for the entire case. This was not going to be a subdued legal issue. This was going to be a show. A public disintegration of one of reality television's most notorious families. And as the gavel came down again, calling for a recess, one thing was certain. This was only the start. The sale of the land had opened the floodgates, and the Browns would soon find themselves fighting battles not only for money, but for years of broken promises, resentment, and betrayal. And if you thought Kody's breakdown was dramatic, wait until you hear what each wife said when her turn finally arrived to have a say. Years prior to the courtroom breakdown, there was a fantasy so large, so shiny, that it led 4 women to wait just a little bit longer, even when the rest of their world seemed to be crumbling. That fantasy was called Coyote Pass. It wasn't property. It wasn't earth, sagebrush, and Arizona sunsets. To the Browns, at least to Kody Brown, it was the solution to everything. The vision that sparked hope. When Kody first introduced the idea of buying land in Flagstaff, his eyes lit up with excitement. He gestured across the wide open fields, telling his wives, "This is where we'll build our forever. A home for all of us. A place where our kids will grow up side by side. A compound that shows the world what plural marriage is really about." Christine's heart skipped a beat at the idea. She had dreamed of togetherness, of her children feeling part of something larger than separate houses and divided attentions. She envisioned cookouts in combined backyards, children on bikes down curving dirt roads, and nights when all the wives got along. Janelle, ever the pragmatist, did the math in her head. The property was safety, a down payment on their future. For years she'd been moving from one rented house to the next, never staying anywhere long enough to get settled. Land ownership provided security, possession, and the ability to finally put down roots. Meri once admitted, glimpsed the promise of belonging. For years she had been the first wife, but no longer the beloved one. She envisioned that perhaps, just perhaps, Coyote Pass would remap the family roles, make her once again feel part of the group. And Robyn? She was already rooted in her relationship with Kody, but she welcomed the vision with tears streaming down her face. For her, Coyote Pass showed that Kody's vows didn't only extend to her but to her children as well. It meant she and her children weren't additions to the family, but were locked in the foundation of its future. Leastwise, that was the dream. Cracks in the foundation. The purchase of the land proceeded. The Browns proudly stood before the camera, grinning under Arizona skies. Fans of the TLC cried out for them, thinking that they were witnessing the reconstitution of the Brown family. But soon enough, cracks showed. Next came the finances. The Browns had never been open with money. Janelle, who had always handled the family finances, became more and more aggravated as expenses ballooned. "We can't just keep buying land and homes without a plan," she cautioned. But Kody waved her off. "We'll figure it out. We always do." And then there was the emotional rift. Christine admitted on camera she really didn't even want to relocate to Flagstaff in the first place. She felt alone, her children miserable, and Kody distant emotionally. But she held on to Coyote Pass because she hoped the dream would fix what was broken.